The Carpenter and the Cradle, a History Weaver Adventure, Book 1, by Connie Worden, read by the author. Chapter 22. The next morning, as the sun rose, the men of the council met back again by the burned-out remains of the hut. Now they would finally break their fast of both food and speech. Since the penalty enacted last night against the stranger, there would have been no food eaten by them, nor any word spoken by them, to anyone. Now they could speak. They would eat together later, after their last task connected to last night's proceedings had been carried out. First, they would clear away the rubble of the fire and bury the remains of the executed man. He may have been an enemy, but he was still a human. They would dignify him with a proper burial and the right rituals for the burial of one who had been an enemy, but still a human enemy. The enemy had no such respect for the dead of Ko's people, but the guardians always respected the dead, even the enemy dead. They began their rubble clearing. The fire had done its work thoroughly. The hut was ashes. Some larger chunks of wood that hadn't burned all the way to nothing still lay scattered around the ash heap, which was still smoldering, and once or twice flared as a member of the council turned over a burnt log. First, water was poured generously over the embers and ashes so that the pieces would be able to be handled by the men's bare hands. The work needed to be done with bare hands. It was a mark of respect for the dead. The chunks of logs were pulled away and put into a pile together to be taken back into the forest, distributed here and there, and turned back into soil once they rotted away. The ashes that were small enough to be left would be buried on the spot with the burnt corpse, and a stone of memory would be erected over the spot. It was a stone of memory, because the act was to be remembered as a warning to all traitors and all enemies who may happen to invade the village. But it was also in remembrance that a human life had been wasted and then ultimately taken. Wasted because the man had chosen to make himself an enemy of the guardians, and to act on that enmity as a spy. It was necessary to take such lives. This was the first one of these ceremonies Ko had ever attended, since he had joined the council as its youngest member on attaining manhood this past year. He couldn't seem to swallow past the lump in his throat, and his heart beat faster as the men cleared the burnt wreckage of the hut down to the layer where the man's body surely must be. He had never seen this kind of death before, and it was hard to get used to. Goro, working away on the site, suddenly raised a shout. "Limo, you'd better come," he said. "What is it?" Limo said impatiently, coming over from where he had been supervising the piling of the burnt logs, making sure proper procedure was being followed. "Where is he?" Goro snapped. "What do you mean, where is who?" Limo asked between gritted teeth. It was plain he didn't like Goro's way of addressing him, but Ko could hear the fear verging on panic in Goro's tone. It wasn't disrespect, at least not at that moment, that made him speak brusquely to his leader. It was plain old straight-up fear. "He's gone. Where could he have gone?" Goro said. "What do you mean, gone?" one of the other men asked with shock in his voice. "You mean the body's not there?" "Nowhere," Goro exclaimed, running one foot through the ashes and spreading them out, to illustrate that there was nothing in their midst except ashes. Using his foot to touch the ashes wasn't a gesture of respect for the dead, and would normally have been forbidden. It showed how deep was Goro's disturbance. Limo said nothing about the lapse, which showed he was equally disturbed by the turn of events. Limo dived into the pile with both hands, sifting the ashes carefully. After a few minutes of this, there could be no doubt about it. No matter how thorough of a job the fire had done, there should have been human remains. Even Ko, who had no prior experience with this type of execution, knew that fact. It was plain and obvious. The man was not there. Had someone or something come and taken away the body before the men of the council got to it? Or had he somehow escaped the flames? Was he somewhere now, alive and well? Had he, like Ko, cheated the fate that a council had decreed for him? Rex tossed the loop and knotted end of the rope over a sturdy tree branch and then down into the hole. "There's the rope, Will. Just put your foot in the loop and hang on up higher and we'll try to pull you out. Climb as much as you can," Rex instructed. "Wait!" Will's voice could be heard saying faintly. "What?" Rex called back impatiently. I found something. Well, some things. There's a kind of room I'm in. I can't make out properly what the things are. Can you go back for a flashlight? And if you could bring that 10-foot ladder and get it down the hole, you could all come down here. You've got to see this. It feels like some kind of furniture, wooden, with something carved into it. At least, I can feel a groove like it's carved. I can't make out what it says, though. Coral's curiosity spiked. We can get that ladder. It's a ways to carry it, but between the three of us, Rex and Mom and I, we could get it here. Coral took off towards the cherry barn at a gallop. Rex had no choice but to follow, and their mum followed at a more stately pace. It wasn't long before they were back with the ladder. A little more shovel work on Rex's part made room for the ladder down the hole. Only a foot or so of the ladder's length protruded from the top of the hole. The floor level of the cavity must be about 8 feet below its roof, where Will had fallen through, Coral predicted mentally. Will had dug down only about a foot when he disappeared into the hole. Rex went first, and excitedly Coral followed. Mum declined. I'm staying put in case something goes wrong and you need someone to go for help, she insisted when they urged her to follow them down. This was sensible, so the other two descended without her. Rex flashed the light around a sort of room of dirt in the earth. Sure enough, piled against the wall of the grotto were the wooden pieces as Will had described them. Careful, Rex commanded as Will began pulling the pieces one off the other. They might fall apart like that wood at the entrance. They seem solid enough, Will commented. That must be a table, Coral said, and that looks like a chair, or throne of sorts. What's carved on them, do you think? No idea, Rex said shortly. Some kind of symbols, Will said. Well, here's some stone pieces on the bottom. Can't move those. Too heavy, Will said. With holes in them, what do you think they were used for? Again, no idea, Rex said unhelpfully. This one's all blackened like it had a fire in it. This is completely bizarre, Coral said, whispering for some reason. They were all behind this kind of wooden frame, Will pointed it out. And then these two. Flanking the pile in the corner behind the solid frame were 2 stands with clay holders that looked as though they may have been meant for torches. What do you think this symbol on it means? Rex said, stooping beside one of the stones and tracing the pattern with his finger that was carved into the rock. He pointed his light at the side of another item. They all seem to have some kind of symbol on them. His tone was hushed, but excited. One by one, he explored around all the pieces till he discovered the symbol belonging to each one. Do you think there's something ancient? Coral asked in the same hushed tone. Doesn't look like it, Rex said shortly. There's what the metal detector was reacting to. From the floor of the cavern, he picked up a piece of broken wood that had rotted to the point of softness. It still held on to the remains of 2 pieces of a rusty hasp with a padlock fastened through its loop. The other piece of wood to which it had been connected must have been at the top of the cavern ceiling where Will had fallen through. His weight had broken the rotten wood over the entrance and torn the hasp and lock from the wooden frame surrounding the entrance. That's a modern-ish lock. Old, but not ancient, Rex pointed out. And then there's this, he added. He directed his flashlight beam to a footprint in the soft earth of the cavern floor. It was very definitely made by a modern running shoe. And the shoe print was nothing like the shoes any of the 3 of them were wearing.